Okay, here we go. Continuing on in these clips, it's kind of what I've been saying for many years that if you want to reduce and mitigate homelessness, you need a holistic approach. Band-aids won't work. It requires a system that's comprehensive and deals with the root causes. Being homeless is generally a manifestation of some deeper issues. In this clip, Ember talks, among other things, about the need for a place where you could set up a little camp and like an outhouse. And I think we could do better than that. A place to brush your teeth, take a shower. A typical campground would be much, much better and a choice that many of these folks would make if it was available. And I think that's where we need to do better as a community on a regional basis. The notion, if you put yourself in a homeless person's shoes, why wouldn't you want to come to Encinitas and hang out by the beach and be in one of the best climates in the world? It's a no-brainer, and especially if they don't enforce vagrancy laws, and especially if there's not a provision, an alternative to their situation. The idea last year of making the Encinitas safe parking lot, or whatever they call it, was really a bad idea, I think. And I told my city council that. I've been very vocal about that, as have other people. And at first it was, mostly for Encinitas people that work here and work there. But then all of a sudden it was regional, and they took a regional grant. And before you know it, somehow the word got out. And I've talked to some of these folks. The word got out. Encinitas is homeless friendly, and you can go to Encinitas, and you've got provisions, but it appears to me that they're only a Band-Aid. They're not a holistic solution. So, I think most people agree that we have more homeless in Encinitas now than before. Now, I know there's some people, I think even some council people say, I don't see the homeless problem. Well, they don't walk where I walk, and they don't walk where folks on Nextdoor and on various neighborhoods that I hear. And homelessness is on the increase. The number of mentally ill people, the number of people that are in and out from the transit center down in the canyons by the parks, it's increasing. And we need to think strategically about this in a whole different way. Now, the long and the short, some of our leaders are saying that you can't remove them because of the Supreme Court decision of Mitchell versus Boise, Idaho, which essentially, as I understand it, the city of Boise didn't have, they tried to move people along, and there was a lawsuit, and I think it was a group lawsuit, a class action, and the Supreme Court, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, which said that if you don't have a provision for a place for a homeless person to camp, to lay their head, then they have a right to do this on public property. But if there's a place, a provision, then you can move them along because you give them that opportunity. And in our town, I don't see that happening. I see Jeff up there on Moonlight Beach, and I like Jeff. I talk to him almost every day now, and he admits he's in a terrible situation. But if he had a place with a mandatory, you got to move to this place, guess what? He'd move to that place or he'd have to move on. So this idea that Mitchell versus Boise prohibits us from moving people along who are homeless, it's only because we haven't provided a regional provision. And the long and the short is Encinitas is a very small town. It's like, 5 or 6 miles square, and we're essentially built out. We don't have a place that we could scale to provide an alternative for these people. So now they're in our shadows, and they brush their teeth down at the Moonlight Beach parking lot and in restaurants, and they're in the shadows. It's a very unfortunate thing. I think, and I think most of you that are listening to this probably agree, is that we, as a reasonably wealthy community, we need to invest heavily in a regional solution with the other 17 cities in the county for some place where you can scale and provide services in a location. One of the issues that Jeff had in getting his hip replaced, he didn't have transportation, and he got 5 of his 7 appointments, and then he got flustered, and now he's just kind of over it, and he's just kind of hanging out there. And I'm talking to him about different ideas, and he's kind of shut down right now. But if we had a place where there was the ability of assistance to, have your medical and whatnot, is basically a little annex type of a city. And there's plenty of land in San Diego County, plenty of land. But that's a political solution. That's a building solution in terms of authorizing like a tiny home or a campground type of a place. I heard someone had, I think, 300 acres up by Valley Center that was interested in doing this. And I don't know whatever happened to it. Politically, I think the ball just got dropped and it wasn't pursued, or maybe it wasn't suitable. But that idea, I think, needs to be pursued, that there's a place as a provision. It's interesting. We need to rethink this approach, a new system in case management and the resources that would be embedded in a new place, a new system, a new like tent city. I call it a refugee camp. And in my notes, you'll notice actually a concept paper that I wrote, which I'll go into just a little bit here in a moment. But instead of having numerous programs that are virtually Band-Aids that are unavailable, when somebody's in crises, we need to have the resources. And it doesn't have to be an apartment in Encinitas. It can be a tent in a campground with security and some kind of food provision and some medical and social services, where we go to them and we provide it for them. And there's a specific case management and a results or a results orientation. If it's not successful, then we need to either get rid of the social worker or we need to add another social worker to guide and get people through. And then if people don't want to, if they just want to be bums, well, you take them to a different place. I mean, you've got to segment this thing. There's people that are going through transition that lost their place, lost their job. But then there's other people that are victims of domestic violence. There's other people that they just don't want to work. And I've mentioned some of those people. And, that's their choice. But I don't think that we as Encinitas residents should give them priority. I mean, they can live their life, but I don't like the idea of their living in the shadows. I think we need to provide a place and invest heavily in that. The idea that the state, they have kind of this top-down approach where they feed money and grants, and then hotels are bought and services, and there are all these little Band-Aids. But one of the things that Ember was saying is that, yeah, they gave her a list of low-income housing, but there's really no low-income housing. It's not available. And when you're not working, you need a place. And yes, it may be just a starting place. And it may be like a refugee camp tent city, but at least it's a place and it has a better sense of security. And you've got to provide security, I think. It's very, very important. And so if you think about this, the federal government just approved a $1.9 trillion budget. They say it was for COVID relief, but yet only 9% of it apparently is for actual COVID relief. The rest of it is a huge pork barrel with seemingly infinite special interest groups. And when this new administration came in, they essentially opened the borders. Now we've got a crisis at the border because they're letting them in. And I read one report where up to 50% had COVID, and in the beginning, and I'm not sure if they've corrected it. I hope they have, but they haven't quarantined them. They catch them and they release them. We've got 100,000 people under 18, and a lot of them in the 15 to 17-year-old category. But the new administration saw this, and they put FEMA, which has incredible resources and abilities and rapid response. And they're setting up basically emergency shelter situations, and they've done it within weeks. And so we're doing this for foreign folks that are coming to our shores. They're seeking a better life. But you know what? Our people are seeking a better life, and they're sleeping under bridges. There's 100,000 of them in California alone. Now think about that. If that doesn't indicate a broken system, I don't know what does. So, if you go through the way that the state governor is handling it, I've read reports where building homeless housing is up to $500,000 per copy. Where's the common sense in this? Imagine if we went where we had land and the number of tiny home communities, the number of tent cities that we could do, dispersed in different locations with different types of profiles that would be required to be accepted into the community with caseworkers, we could leverage the money. But it seems like they're spending like drunken fools up there. And so we need to relook at this whole homeless thing rather from the top down, and we need to push back. We need to rethink of it in terms of a system. And I think ultimately, if cities band together because of the Mitchell versus Boise, that there's a possibility that cities and counties can sue the state and sue the federal government because it was their mandates that's causing our degradation and quality of life to go down. And we have plenty of state land and plenty of federal land. If you think about it, they have that bullet train that they're trying to get from, Merced in the inland sector, and there's nobody there. And I know what the idea behind it is. If you build those 2 points, it'll start to populate. But we have plenty of land. And the notion that Encinitas, this 5 square mile of beach paradise that we've worked so hard to develop and create a good vibe of safety and a great place to live, I'm sorry. There's other places that can help people build their life up one step at a time. So it's really, really important, I think, in this whole conversation that we rethink this entire system of homelessness, in fact, housing for that matter. And I think a nationwide, or at least a statewide, KOA hybrid, sort of a tent city, small homes community, tiny home community, is a step in that direction. But it seems year after year, all we hear is talk. And we need to have the political will to do that. We need to have the political will to move people into these camps, and they have to be fully invested in their recovery. If they want to do drugs and continue in doing drugs, I think it's a stupid idea to give them housing first. Let them go out in a campground, quarantine them, and if they want to continue to kill themselves, that's a tragic thing. But my gosh, do we want that in our community? Okay, that's my thoughts. What's yours?